Have you ever noticed how often men fall apart after giving everything to a woman? It happens in silence, but everywhere you look, you can see it. The man who trusted too deeply, who handed over his center of gravity, ends up hollowed out, confused, and often bitter. Divorce courts are filled with men stripped of wealth, custody, and identity. Social media is littered with confessions of men betrayed, discarded, or quietly erased from the lives they thought were stable. This is not just anecdote, it's a cultural pattern. Nietzsche saw it long before our time. He understood that trust, when given without resistance, is not met with gratitude, but with a silent law of nature. The strong test the weak, and the weak collapse under the weight of their own illusions. In today's reality, the evidence is everywhere. Look at how relationships are structured. Men are still told to be providers, protectors, unshakable foundations. Yet the very stability they build often becomes the cage in which they are consumed. The modern dating market exposes it brutally. Statistics show women initiate the majority of divorces. Countless men lose not only resources, but the very sense of self they invested into the relationship. The destruction does not come because women are cruel. It comes because life itself does not reward blind faith. Nietzsche's warning was simple. Love is not a sanctuary, it is a struggle. When a man forgets this, when he treats trust as a shield, he mistakes reality. Trust becomes naivety, and naivety is always punished. The evidence is not hidden in philosophy books. It is in every story of the man who gave everything away, only to find himself erased. This is where our journey begins, not in illusion, but in confrontation. Every man is told from a young age that trust is the foundation of love. Movies, songs, and endless advice repeat the same mantra. Open your heart, be honest, give without fear. But step into the real world and the story looks very different. The men who give the most trust are often the ones who lose the most. Divorce courts don't lie. Most separations are initiated by women, and the men who trusted fully are left broken, financially drained, and emotionally erased. Trust, when placed in the wrong hands, becomes a weapon against the one who offers it. Modern relationships expose this clearly. A man invests years building stability, providing security, believing loyalty is enough. Yet when desire fades or comfort is no longer exciting, the very foundation he built is used as the exit route. The woman leaves, but she doesn't leave empty-handed. She leaves with the benefits of his labor, his children, his years. The man is left with silence, wondering how honesty and trust became the tools of his downfall. This is not about bitterness. It is about seeing the reality hidden behind the fairy tale. Blind trust is not noble, it is dangerous. In today's world, where options are endless and loyalty is negotiable, trust without strength is an invitation to be destroyed. A man who hands over everything, his finances, his emotions, his future, is not securing love. He is securing his own collapse. The trap is subtle because it disguises itself as virtue. Society applauds the man who trusts fully, who exposes his heart without defense. But the evidence is everywhere. Those men become the easiest to break. Real strength is not in blind trust. It is in discernment, in knowing when trust builds connection and when it signs your own destruction. Look around modern culture, and you will see that relationships no longer begin with honesty, but with performance. Social media has turned attraction into a stage. Filters, curated photos, witty captions. All of it forms a mask. What you meet at first is not the person, but the persona. Seduction today is no longer just a glance across a room. It is a carefully designed identity meant to captivate. Men who do not understand this walk straight into a trap. They believe the mask is the truth. They take beauty, attention, or flattery at face value and confuse presentation with character. The result is predictable. They invest in an illusion. Dating apps prove this every day. A few pictures, a short bio, and a performance of charm can secure instant admiration. But what hides behind the mask often emerges only after commitment. And by then, the man has already surrendered time, energy, and resources. This is not to say masks are malicious. They are instinct. Just as men project strength to attract, women project allure. It is survival in a competitive marketplace. But when a man forgets that seduction is layered, he becomes vulnerable. He expects consistency where there was only performance. In reality, the mask is not the problem. The problem is the man who confuses the mask for reality. The one who forgets that attraction is only the opening act, not the foundation. Modern life rewards the man who can see through performance, who doesn't confuse attention for devotion. In a world where masks are everywhere, the advantage belongs to the one who can look past the surface, recognize the performance, and demand authenticity before giving his strength. This is how men turn seduction into clarity, not destruction. Modern men are raised to believe that women are meant to be their refuge, a safe place where they can rest from the chaos of the world. But reality shows the opposite. Relationships collapse precisely when men mistake women for comfort instead of recognizing them as force. A force is unpredictable, alive, and demanding. And this is what the feminine truly is. Not a shelter, but a storm. Look at the evidence in today's world. Men who expect peace at home often discover the opposite. Divorce filings reveal that the majority of breakups are not initiated by men, but by women. Why? Because the role of passive comfort is unsustainable. Women are not designed to simply preserve a man's security. They are moved by change, by energy, by transformation. The moment the relationship turns into routine and stillness, the force disrupts it. And the man who thought he found a resting place discovers he was building on shifting ground. This does not mean men are powerless. On the contrary, men have the advantage when they stop expecting comfort and start respecting the force. The man who understands that the feminine is not a passive presence, but a testing energy will not be destroyed by it. He will not collapse when the storm arrives, because he anticipated it. The eternal feminine is movement. It creates, it consumes, it renews. Men who build their lives on the illusion of stability get crushed when this force asserts itself. But men who build themselves first, strong, independent, unshaken, can meet it as equals. In today's reality, the strongest relationships are not built on comfort, but on tension and respect for power. The feminine is not the pillow to rest on. It is the fire that demands the man to stay awake. When a man is betrayed, his first instinct is to see it as cruelty, a deliberate act of malice aimed at breaking him. But in truth, betrayal is less about intention and more about nature. It is not always a planned attack. It is a law of life exposing weakness. In modern society, this is clearer than ever. The high divorce rates, the rising number of men publicly sharing stories of infidelity or abandonment, point not to isolated cruelty, but to a recurring pattern. Trust given without strength eventually collapses. Consider how relationships unfold today. A man builds his entire identity around his partner. He stops cultivating himself, loses ambition, and puts all his focus on providing stability. At first, this loyalty is rewarded, but slowly, it suffocates the very attraction that brought them together. The woman does not consciously plan betrayal, but the force of life pulls her away from stagnation. Desire looks for vitality, not dependency. And so betrayal occurs, not because she is evil, but because nature punishes the man who confuses comfort with permanence. This is where men have the advantage, if they are willing to see clearly. Betrayal becomes fatal only for the man who believed he could escape life's law by hiding in devotion. But the man who expects testing, who knows that loyalty cannot be demanded without strength, cannot be broken. He does not view betrayal as tragedy, but as revelation. In today's reality, betrayal is less a personal attack than it is proof that passivity has consequences. A man who continues to grow, who keeps his ambition and independence alive, rarely faces destruction in the same way. Because when strength is present, nature does not need to correct weakness. It recognizes balance, and balance endures. In today's world, men are not destroyed because they are too harsh, too ambitious, or too demanding. They are destroyed because they are weak. Weakness is the one condition life refuses to forgive. You can see this in every failed relationship where a man handed over his entire identity in the hope of securing love. He thought sacrifice would buy loyalty. Instead, it drained him of the very qualities that once attracted her. Modern culture feeds this weakness. Men are told to soften, to lower their guard, to be endlessly understanding. The message is clear. Strength intimidates, so reduce yourself to be loved. But when men follow this script, the results are visible. Attraction fades, respect collapses, and the man who tried to please ends up discarded. The evidence is everywhere. Studies on relationships show that women report losing interest when their partner becomes passive, when he stops leading, when his ambition disappears. Weakness does not inspire devotion. It suffocates it. The real advantage belongs to the man who refuses to apologize for his strength. He knows that compassion without backbone turns into pity, and pity destroys desire. He understands that providing is not enough if it costs him his independence, his vision, and his edge. In a world that constantly rewards conformity, he chooses to remain unshaken. Weakness invites destruction, not because women seek to harm men, but because life itself rejects fragility. Just as nature eliminates what cannot survive, relationships eliminate what cannot lead. The man who recognizes this truth no longer seeks safety in submission. He grows sharper, more disciplined, and harder to replace. In today's reality, weakness is not just a flaw, it is a sentence. And strength is the only absolution. Modern relationships are sold as partnerships built on equality, peace, and endless compromise. Yet when you strip away the illusions, love reveals itself as struggle. It is not the calm union men are promised, but a constant test of strength, a battlefield where attraction is won or lost. Every man who has lived long enough knows this truth. The moments of deepest passion are not born from comfort, but from tension, from challenge, from conflict that refuses to let either side grow complacent. Look at the reality around us. Couples who live only for routine collapse under boredom. Marriages that run solely on stability often end with one partner searching for fire elsewhere. Affairs, divorces, and emotional estrangements do not happen because two people hated each other, but because the spark of struggle disappeared. In the absence of struggle, life feels dead. And when life feels dead, desire leaves with it. This is why men who treat love as harmony fall hardest. They enter unarmed, believing peace is enough, only to be blindsided when chaos erupts. But men who understand love as war are never surprised. They know conflict is not a threat, but proof that life is still present. They see that arguments, tension, and resistance are not signs of failure, but the raw energy that keeps the bond alive. In today's world, where relationships are constantly tested by endless options and distractions, the man who thrives is the one who embraces the battlefield. He does not flee from struggle, nor does he see it as the end. He understands that love, like war, demands vigilance, strength, and strategy. And in that war, advantage always belongs to the man who refuses to surrender his ground. One of the most dangerous traps for men today is the belief that pity will earn them love. They confuse compassion with attraction, thinking that by exposing wounds, weakness, and need, they will receive care in return. Yet modern reality shows the opposite. Men who lean on pity may receive temporary sympathy, but they lose respect. And when respect dies, love soon follows. You can see this play out in countless relationships. A man loses his drive, complains about his burdens, and turns his partner into his emotional caretaker. At first, she may respond with kindness, but over time that kindness hardens into resentment. Why? Because pity cannot coexist with desire. A woman may comfort a man she feels sorry for, but she will not admire him. And without admiration, intimacy withers. This is why so many men who expect nurturing end up abandoned. They mistake care for devotion, forgetting that desire is never built on weakness. Social dynamics today expose this pattern with brutal clarity. Men who overshare their struggles online, hoping for understanding, are often ridiculed or ignored. Meanwhile, men who carry their struggles with quiet strength are respected, even envied. The difference is simple. Pity lowers a man, while resilience elevates him. The advantage belongs to the man who refuses to let pity define him. He does not deny hardship, but he transforms it into fuel. Instead of begging for comfort, he grows sharper under pressure. This creates the opposite effect. Instead of losing respect, he commands it. In today's world, where weakness is quickly exposed, pity is the silent poison that kills desire. A man must remember that being pitied may win him attention, but only strength secures loyalty. Modern culture insists that relationships should be equal, that man and woman stand on the same ground with no hierarchy, no difference, no struggle for dominance. On paper, it sounds fair. In practice, it fails. Equality is an illusion because attraction is not built on sameness. It is built on polarity, on the tension between strength and surrender, leadership and trust, stability and chaos. When these roles blur, desire dissolves and the bond weakens. Look at what happens in relationships where a man fully embraces the promise of equality. He hands over authority, avoids making decisions, and expects balance to keep things steady. At first, everything appears calm, but soon, dissatisfaction emerges. The woman begins to carry the weight of leadership, forced into roles that stifle her natural instincts. She may not articulate it, but resentment grows. The man, thinking he has done the right thing by being fair, cannot understand why respect is slipping away. Modern reality proves this daily. Couples who claim to live in perfectly equal partnerships often face higher rates of disconnection and divorce. The reasoning is simple. No one desires what mirrors them. Desire needs contrast. A man who loses his edge in the pursuit of equality becomes indistinguishable, and indistinguishable men are easily forgotten. The advantage lies with the man who rejects illusions and embraces reality. He understands that equality in value does not mean sameness in role. He leads without apology, not as a tyrant, but as a foundation. This leadership is not oppressive, it is attractive. In today's fractured world, where many men surrender their natural authority in fear of appearing domineering, the ones who stand firm in their strength command loyalty, respect, and desire. Equality may sound noble, but polarity keeps love alive. The greatest mistake men make in love is turning women into idols. They place them on pedestals, worship their beauty, and shape their lives around winning approval. This devotion feels noble, even romantic, but in reality, it destroys both respect and attraction. No one admires what kneels before them. Modern society provides endless proof. Men flood social media with compliments, likes, and validation, creating digital altars for women they barely know. They believe constant attention will secure affection, yet it has the opposite effect. The more they worship, the more invisible they become. Meanwhile, the men who withhold blind devotion, who keep their focus on their own pursuits, are the ones who stand out. Admiration follows strength, not submission. In relationships, idolization is even more corrosive. A man who builds his entire identity around his partner smothers her under the weight of his dependence. He becomes predictable, easily controlled, and eventually disregarded. Women often say they want to be adored, but in practice, endless idolization suffocates desire. What they truly crave is the tension of pursuit, the challenge of a man who remains slightly out of reach, never fully conquered. Reality makes this clear. Divorce courts are filled with men who sacrificed everything, only to be discarded when their worship turned into weakness. The lesson is brutal but undeniable. When a man bows too low, he loses both power and place. The advantage belongs to the man who refuses to idolize. He does not diminish a woman's value, but he never places her above his own. His life remains larger than her presence, his mission untouched by her approval. In today's world, where blind worship is common and respect is rare, the man who resists idolization cannot be destroyed, because he cannot be replaced. At the core of every relationship lies an unspoken truth. Power only respects power. A man who abandons his own authority in search of peace or validation does not win loyalty, he invites contempt. In modern reality, this is seen everywhere. Men who compromise their values, their ambitions, and even their boundaries in order to keep the relationship alive almost always find themselves discarded. Not because they were unkind, but because they became powerless. Today's world amplifies this truth. Social media gives women endless options, constant attention, and a stage to measure their partner against others. In this climate, weakness is exposed faster than ever. A man who bends to every demand in fear of losing her does not appear devoted. He appears replaceable. And nothing destroys desire more than knowing someone will accept anything just to stay. The men who thrive are those who hold firm ground. They do not confuse dominance with respect, nor kindness with surrender. They set the tone by living with discipline, by refusing to compromise their principles, and by demanding the same standard they uphold. This strength is not loud or controlling. It is quiet, steady, and undeniable. It creates an atmosphere where loyalty is not forced, but freely given. Proof of this is clear in modern relationships. Women rarely leave men they truly respect, even in the face of hardship. But when respect collapses, no amount of affection, history, or promises can keep them. The dividing line is always power. Advantage belongs to the man who understands that love is not sustained by comfort, but by strength. He does not fear loss, because he knows that real loyalty cannot be bought with weakness. In today's world, power respects power, and nothing else. In every age, the rarest kind of man is the one willing to walk away. Not out of anger, not out of weakness, but out of refusal to be bound by conditions that strip him of strength. In today's world, this figure stands out even more. Most men cling. They stay in relationships that have long collapsed, accept disrespect in the hope of change, and sacrifice their dignity just to keep someone who no longer values them. This desperation is why they are broken. Look at the evidence around us. Men endure marriages where loyalty is gone, partnerships where admiration has died, and situations where betrayal is excused as normal. Courts are filled with cases where men lost everything, not because they were overpowered, but because they refused to leave when it was time. The fear of walking away chained them tighter than any law could. Contrast this with the man who knows when to stand up and exit. He does not beg, he does not collapse, and he does not negotiate his worth. His power comes from the one choice weakness can never make: the choice to leave. And when he does, something remarkable happens. Respect often follows him. The same loyalty that seemed dead reawakens, because nothing commands attention like a man who cannot be held against his will. In today's reality, where endless distraction and temptation test every bond, the advantage belongs to the man who is never afraid to lose. By walking away, he proves that his value is not tied to anyone else's approval. He is free, and freedom is the ultimate strength. The man who can leave is the man who cannot be destroyed.